Alrighty, guys, welcome back to the Identity Project. Today, I have a very special guest, somebody that is a fellow dad, is a fellow nutrition professional in the space. You're, Dezi, you're a registered dietitian, is that right?
Yeah, registered dietitian. Yes, sir.
Very nice, very nice. Anyways, with that butchered intro, I'll have him actually intro himself. But what's going on, Dezi? How are you, my man?
I'm good, man. I'm super pumped to be on this podcast, brother. Even with you reaching out from the get-go, I was super excited. So, I'm glad to have a conversation with you. Obviously, being fellow dads, I'm excited, bro.
That's awesome. Yeah, I look forward to it. I always enjoy talking to other dads. That was actually something I tried to do quite a bit before Josiah got here. It was just like
Yeah,
reaching out, trying to get advice, this and that. And it's like, at the end of the day, I feel like you just have to have your own experience. It's like
yeah,
you can take advice and whatnot, but it's like it's just like nutrition. It's
yeah.
individualized to you, right?
Yeah, no, man. I mean, that's the thing that I figured out right away is like everyone wants to give their 2 cents, and it's really the same thing in the nutrition field. So there is a lot of similarities. I'm totally with you.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Well, dude, obviously, we do a lot of kind of similar things here now, but I would love to kind of dive back into your story and kind of learn more about how you've gotten to where you are today. So, where did you
Yeah.
grow up at?
So I grew up part of my life mostly in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So I ended up moving to Arizona middle of my eighth grade year. So now I'm kind of in between Tucson and Phoenix, which is like maybe hour 30 away because of work. But I reside in Tucson, Arizona.
Got it. Got it. Very cool. So, knowing that you're a dad now, did you grow up with brothers and sisters, or were you the only child, or?
Oh man, so I'm the oldest of five.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so there's four boys, and the last one is a girl. So I mean, you can imagine that in a house full of athletes, we're all competing against one another, and even to this day, I mean, yeah, yesterday, we had an Easter egg hunt, and every single time, like we do pregame interviews, and it's ruthless, man. So it was a house breeded with competition.
That is so awesome. I've never heard of pregame interviews for
Oh, you
the
have
the
to.
guy. That's awesome. That's awesome. So, dude, I'm assuming, I mean, obviously you've already talked a little bit about sports here, but I'm assuming you grew up kind of playing sports. What did that look like through kind of elementary school, middle school, high school?
Yeah, man. So I did the whole kind of three sport. So I did baseball. That was the first sport. I don't really know about the age ranges, but I assume that most start with baseball because of T-ball, right?
Yeah.
So I played baseball, basketball, and football. My parents joke with me that I only got 2 years under my belt before I got to high school because they said my grades weren't good. But I don't really believe that. I just think they were scared of me getting hurt. So, but yeah, man, I grew up a three-sport athlete.
Very nice. Yeah, that was me too. I grew up, so baseball was my first sport. Started off with T-ball at like what, 3, 4, or 5, whatever. And then yeah, I think it was the same thing with my mom. I didn't start playing football until I was in seventh grade. And I think a lot
Yeah,
of that
me
was
too.
because she was scared to, let me
Yeah,
play, right?
yeah.
Baseball, I guess, is a little bit, I don't know, considered maybe more safe than football is. But hey,
Yeah,
once you're getting up in the college and pros, baseball is not safe. Like that's
it's
scary.
not. Yeah, you mean 90-mile-an-hour balls coming out your way? Like, come on, man.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So dude, tell me a little bit about kind of like your nutrition, like growing up. Like, what did the household look like for you? I mean, obviously, I had three other brothers and sisters. I was the only child till I was 8, and then
Okay.
my parents had twins on Christmas Eve, and then they had
Whoa.
another one unexpectedly 1 year later. So I went from like spoiled only child, like up until 8, and then like the world hit me at 8 years old.
Yeah.
Like, but tell me a little bit, like, what did like nutrition look like for you kind of growing up throughout, your childhood?
So for me, the most healing process about what I do now and exactly what I try to do with my like one-to-one online clients is establishing, a good relationship with food from the get-go. And also kind of taking that responsibility with what it has to do with the family, because growing up, we didn't share gifts, we shared food, right? So like a classic example of that is, and I'm sure you probably got the same thing, is like for Christmas you might get underwear and socks, right? You get that like classic dude gift or kid gift. But to us, like the gift was food. So growing up, it had everything to do with family being around, those people that you love, and then also the foods that you love. So growing up, we were really, really huge in just more community culture and just enjoying food.
Yeah. And I love that. I mean, I think that's, I mean, when you start looking into, the important things in life, I mean, obviously like relationships, human connection, I mean, those are two like really big things.
Huge,
And
yeah.
I mean, for a lot of, obviously I was telling you before this, I've been like looking into more and more of your stuff, but
Yeah,
you talk a lot of kind of like in regards to like that cultural setting, right? And like,
yeah.
obviously like food and culture, I mean, that's a huge aspect of
Hmm.
like decision making, especially in
Yeah,
comparison to, maybe parents and grandparents. And, if you're struggling with like body weight or body image issues and you have a
yeah,
goal
yeah.
of like wanting to lose weight or whatever, and like, so I mean, can you just talk one like that? I mean, was that something that you like struggled with growing up at all, or?
No, that's a great question because I don't necessarily think that I grew up with body image issues. However, like I'm 5'6", right? So growing up as an athlete, I always wanted to be taller because I played the sports that you needed to have some sort of size. So I think growing up, I always had that in my head. And there came a point, and this is another reason why I think parenting is so vital to a childhood's development. It becomes a mindset shift because I remember for the longest time I would tell my mom, like, I want to be taller, like I want to do all these things. I'm not going to be able to go D1 or even go pro at this height or my size. And the really great thing that she did for me, at least, was to change my mindset. Same thing with my dad. So there was one time that I was complaining about it. And growing up, I played mostly tailback, right? So she kind of brought it to like, hey, it's actually really hard because you are so fast, for people to see you in between the lines. So that actually is to your benefit. So just those like subtle mindset shift items are huge because it was huge for me. Even to this day, I always think about, what's the caveat to something that I'm struggling with, and that mindset shift for me was huge, huge growing up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, especially, whether it's working with clients or raising kids, it's like, it's the whole concept of like, making that switch from like the scarcity mindset to the abundancy
Yeah,
mindset, and like,
yeah,
I, I've talked a lot too, like in terms of like that frame control, if you will. Right. And like, I mean, it's like, look, as an entrepreneur, it's like I get negative thoughts in my head every single
all the
day,
time. Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's like if I let every single one of those negative thoughts affect me, then I mean, I just couldn't produce like I wanted to produce. And so a lot of it's like taking that negative thought, reframing it into a more positive thought, or a negative situation, reframing that into a more positive situation. So yeah, man, I love
no
that.
man, that's huge.
I'm sure you listen to a lot of like Gary Vaynerchuk, and
Yep,
I don't know if
all
you
the
do.
time. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I do.
But he talks about kind of like what his mom did, and kind of like how she raised him. And it was like the example of like holding the door open for somebody, right? And she just like praising that like it's the best thing in the world,
Yeah.
and rewarding basically like being a good person, a good human being, and actually working hard versus just like being good at something naturally.
Yeah, because I think the biggest thing, and this is what I mean, Justin, you could probably, relate to this, is the more that I do what I do, and the more that we do as entrepreneurs, the biggest thing that we're trying to provide is value, right? So it doesn't matter. The effort absolutely matters. However, like what you're doing, as long as you're in the mindset of giving and providing value, I think that that's huge. And from a parenting perspective, I mean, that's like, I don't know, like already if you've started with Josiah, but it's one of those things where you're constantly trying to, as a parent, provide value, because like the only thing that you don't want to do is just, kill your kid, right? So it's like, just make sure they live up until a certain point. So it's huge.
Yeah. Speaking on that point, I mean, obviously, how old is your daughter now, you said?
So she just turned 3 a couple of weeks ago. She's 3. I mean, I'm gonna be super cliche, but she's 3 going on friggin' 21.
Yeah. So yeah, you definitely have a few more years there under your belt, but it's just been
Yeah.
crazy. I mean, even in these, these 7, 8 weeks or whatever, just like the the level of like responsibility that, is now like put on you in your life. It's funny. It's like it goes from like basically from like selfish to like, you know, selfless, right? And it's like the same thing happened to a small degree when you like, you know, you get your first dog, right? Or your first animal or, you know, whatever. But now like this level of responsibility just increases more and more, getting married, having an animal, like having a child. And so it's a beautiful thing. I mean, it's just, it's interesting how that kind of journey of life, you know, happens.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, but it's all kind of a curiosity project for me because, I remember when my daughter Rory was like 7, 8 weeks, you know, my wife was breastfeeding the whole time. So I was like, well, what the hell do I do? You know what I mean? And it was actually really strengthening to learn about ways that I can support her because, I mean, this is a huge reason why I do what I do now, where it's a lot more promotion and empowerment for dads because when I was first coming on the scene as a new dad, there wasn't a whole lot of resources for me. So I kind of had to seek that out and kind of like what we were saying, kind of off recording of you kind of learn from your own experiences, right? So, I mean, that stuff is huge.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and what we were talking about before this, like the information, right? I mean, I cannot imagine, like I talked to like my grandpa, you know, yesterday was Easter and I talked to my grandpa and like, you know, they didn't have these resources, right? Like it's like they learn from their parents and their, you know, maybe their friends or whatever their environment. But like for us these days, it's like, I mean, you can really pretty much learn anything about anything if you're willing to put in the work to, you know, actually learn it. So it's a beautiful thing. But all right, back to your story. I'm like the king of like going off on tangents and like these like
Dude, I'm the same way. I can talk about dadhood till day's end, man. So I'm good.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. So let's fast forward a little bit. Like as you are kind of going through these middle school, high school years here, obviously you're playing sports, but like what type of child were you growing up? Like were you like when you got into high school, were you the kid that was like getting into trouble, or were you like the smart kid, or like, you know, what type of kid were you, especially in those high school years?
I would put it as the kid who had a lot of potential, but was also a troublemaker, I guess. Man, I joke with people, Justin. I stayed in detention, right? I stayed in like getting kicked out of class. I mean, that was kind of something that happened, but I also think it had a lot to do with this is another reason why I do what I do now, just kind of like men empowerment, especially in the relationship, because my parents really struggled from a marriage standpoint, you know, in my middle school years. And I definitely kind of looking back acted out of just not knowing how to feel and not knowing how to express those feelings. And, you know, that was the reason why, you know, football was such a huge love for me, because it was like, okay, well, I don't really understand these feelings right now. So I'm going to go take this out on something. Right. So I think that's what sports are to a large extent, is it's a release and it's an escape from those things. So, I mean, growing up, like I said, I stayed in detention. Right. But at the same time, like I wasn't a great test taker, and you know the way that I learned is all about application, and I really believe that's why I'm successful and continue to be successful what I'm doing now, because it's all about application and connection with others. And I think just socially that's been huge for me.
Yeah, I 100% agree on that, and actually very, very similar paths there.
Nice.
So knowing that you're a registered dietitian now, I mean, you know, I ended up like I didn't go the RD route, but I did graduate with my nutrition degree.
Nice.
But you know, school was really, 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 really hard for me. I mean, school took me, you know, 6 years to graduate instead of 4. I mean, I was like working another job and all that too, but you know, still. But yeah, man, you know, to be honest, until about halfway through college, I thought that I was just like stupid because I had like dyslexia and I had like, you know, ADD, ADHD, whatever. I got prescribed to 60 milligram Vyvanse the first day that I went to the doctor. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I know. I very soon stopped taking those and was like, oh my God, I can't take this. But
you didn't sleep for 7 days.
Oh my God. Yeah. They're like, take it every single day. And like, I would just take it, you know, if I needed it for like school or whatever. But finally I was like, all right, I've got to stop taking this stuff. Like it's,
yeah.
But anyways, you know, what I realized about halfway through school was like, I didn't learn, like I couldn't read textbooks, you know, it would just like my wife can read a book 3 times in the time I read it once. Right. Like, but like I would read, I would learn through like audio and through video. And so I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, man, like I wish I would have known that like back in elementary school rather than thinking I'm stupid all the way until halfway through college, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, man, I'm the same way, Justin. I think even now, I have friends that I grew up with, and so a lot of them kind of see the kind of rise that I'm doing from a social media and entrepreneur standpoint. And because I've grown up with them, they, obviously can razz me in any type of way they want to, right? So they'll kind of screenshot things that I kind of posted that might be, grammatically incorrect. And I'm just like, man, like shut the hell up. Like, I don't care right now. It's just, I'm trying to connect with people. I'm the same way, dude. It'll take me days upon days to read a chapter because I'm like, what the hell did I just read?
Yeah, no, dude, I'm completely the same. So, I mean, when you were like going through kind of like the whole RD route with that, I mean, like talk about that a little bit. I mean, were there any times that you were like, I just don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, to finish this?
Dude, all the time, man. Cause I right out of the gates, because it took me like 6 years to graduate too, by the way. So, at the University of Arizona, obviously you get done with your bachelor degree. And if you're competitive, AKA 3.8, 4.0, you might get what's called a dietetic internship, right? So for those of you that don't know, after dietitians get their nutritional sciences degree, they have to go for this really, really crazy competitive internship that is usually unpaid, by the way. And so once they get in, it's a year of that, and it's a really expensive program. So right out of the gates, like I was told by some of I wouldn't even call them mentors, because like in my mind, a mentor believes in you. So the teachers and other faculty that were part of that program had said, like, you're not competitive, you're not going to get one. So, I mean, for me, the way that I got around it was just getting experience and just being able to connect with people. And that was a huge strength for me because, on paper, like Justin, I don't look good, but obviously in person and my work speaks for itself. It's like, oh, okay, this isn't the only way that people need to learn.
Yeah. I love that, man. I mean, honestly, my situation was, same thing. So I started doing personal training at 18 while I was in school, and like had built up a pretty good client base, making pretty good money. And then they're like, oh yeah, you have to do this internship, unpaid. I was going to lose all my clients and like not work for you. And I had just gotten married, and I'm like, damn, I'm just not going to be able to do that. But I do want to finish the degree that I've, started and all of that. But anyways, so what, like, did you have, like, what impacted you or what made you want to go and study nutrition?
So originally I wanted to be a pediatrician. So when I first was trying to go from, because I played some like JC football. So when I started doing that, I was at the JC and then transferring to the university. I wanted to be a pediatrician. So by default at the University of Arizona, they didn't have a pre-med program. So it was actually the nutritional sciences program that did it. And, I joke with people like throughout the process, like Gen Chem happened. So I was like, all right, well, that C isn't going to fly in med school. But at the same time, and it kind of goes back to your original question, which is like, hey, like, tell me about your childhood and food and things like that. Throughout the process of learning about culture, learning about lifestyle, things like that from a food perspective, I fell back in love with my culture and how I was brought up from a food perspective, because it brought it back to like, oh, psychologically, this is what my nana was doing. These are what my aunts and uncles, my parents. And for me, it was just really affirming. So I kept going down that route, and I honestly never looked back. It's been amazing.
Wow. Yeah. I love that, man. I think for me, because I think about that a lot, it's like, man, I've been in the field now for almost 10 years and like, I still love it. I'm still passionate about it. And I think that's a huge blessing, because I think there's a lot of people that don't find that, especially, from such an early age. But, I do know that, maybe not exactly in my immediate family, but like, sometimes in the extended family and just friends that I had known growing up, like, weight was something that a lot of people struggled with. And, it was, as soon as I started getting into that, it was something that I really wanted, you want to help everybody. Right.
Yeah.
But, I think that was definitely a huge influence on me. it's like our parents do the best that they can. They do the best that they know at that time, you know? And so I mean, I had a great childhood and all of those things, but I mean, there was a lot of, you know, eating out, like the Taco Bells, McDonald's all the time. You know, there was a lot of like the frozen dinners and all of that.
Mhm.
And I mean, I remember there was one year I got like strep throat, like literally like 12 times in one year. And, you know, it's just crazy because it's like you, you know, it just really makes you think about like what got you into the field and like what makes you passionate about it. It's like, because I didn't have this crazy transformation of my own, but what it was is like, man, I really want to help other people, because it's almost like you can't help your immediate family or extended family sometimes. You know, sometimes you need to prove it with the rest of the world before you can come
Yeah.
back and help your own.
Yeah. And I think it kind of speaks to Justin, like what you're doing now, where at the time you might not have seen a purpose behind what you're doing that really fueled it. But at the same time, I think right now with what you're doing is a really good example, because not only are you empowering people to find their why, right? I mean, we kind of joked beforehand. You're like, hey, I've been doing some stalking of you beforehand. I'm the same way, man. I really respect what you do, especially the clients that you talk about, because there is a lot of sports performance, which is something I'm passionate about. And also just kind of like purposeful questions about like why and purpose. So on another end too, it's kind of nice to see the transformation of what we do with clients, because I think to a large extent we have done that or are in the process of continually finding our purpose. Don't you think?
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%, man. And thank you for that. I appreciate
Yeah.
it. Yeah, man. I've been very inspired by a lot of people. You know, again, there's the good and the bad with social media, you know, but it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
if you go looking for the good, you'll find the good. If you go looking for the bad, you'll find the bad. And like, you know, like I think this podcast right here is a great example of like the good. You know, it's like I
Yeah.
reach out to, you know, somebody that I've never met my whole entire life that lives in Arizona. I'm in Texas, and shoot a
Yeah.
DM. We're hopping on a podcast, and hopefully this 1 hour, you know, is educational and inspires
Yeah. Yeah.
others. And so I love it, man. I love it. So dude, tell me a little bit, I guess, you know, going back to my terrible intro I did there, give me a formal intro to you and what you do now. And then maybe we can dive into some nutrition for the people here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the way that I kind of like my pitch, right? My elevator pitch. So my name is Dezi Abeyta. I'm a father, a husband, an imperfect person. I'm a registered dietitian, online nutrition coach, and entrepreneur. And on top of that, I'm also a professional sports registered dietitian. So my passion is obviously a lot of the sports performance, but it really is ingrained in just empowering men, empowering dads, empowering families to be imperfect, and to also find ways from a nutrition, exercise, and self-care perspective to find their path, to find their own. So, I mean, that's usually what I tend to tell people. How'd I do?
Nice. Dude, I love that. Yeah. See, guys, there's no way I could have done that. No, man, that's awesome. I love that. So would you say like who, I mean, are you working with more like dads then? Are you working with more like in the sports performance realm, or what's kind of
So
like most of your population there?
So yeah, no, it's a good question. So it's actually both. So on one end, on the online nutrition front, it's a lot of dads. Like I joke, I have a couple fit moms too. So you know that's really cool. You know, I actually started a really great Facebook group, the Fit Parennial, right on
Nice.
Facebook. So if you get that and you're a fit parent or a fit dad or mom, you know, hit me up. So it's a really great group of people just kind of building community and talking about a lot about what I do. So I have those, and then in the same token, I actually, like I had said, I travel up to Phoenix weekly because I work with the Milwaukee Brewers. So I work with all levels, like obviously the major league guys and a lot of our affiliates, and it's something that I really love, man. It's like I kind of joked with the strength coaches that hired me, like, hey, like this is why you hired me, because you get that classic question during the interview, like, why should we hire you over other people? And I had just said, and this is something that I try to think about all the time, was like, hey, like I grew up wanting to be a professional athlete in all three sports. Lo and behold, I was 5'6" and 160. So there wasn't a whole lot of area for me. And at the same time, this is my professional sport. This is me being able to help these athletes and help these people who are likely coming from nothing, or maybe also from other areas to live their dreams. So for me, I get to teach them about something that I love, which is food. And also I get to help them engage in competition, which is like my second love.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I didn't know exactly. I mean, obviously you see one thing through social media, and so it's just trying to figure out
Yeah,
everything that
yeah,
you do. But no, that's awesome. One of the coaches we have on staff, Ellen, she's up in New York, and she actually works with two sports teams out there as well.
nice.
So just hearing, they just finished. It was basketball and hockey, and so they just finished up. But yeah, it's just cool being able to kind of hear all the behind the scenes with her work.
Yeah, like that was one of the things that I had asked about, like the social media policy, and to dumb it down, I think that especially with the Brewers, like, hey, anything that the fans can't see, obviously is kind of we keep close to the chest, but the amount of things that I do is just it's really cool. It's all facets of the job are just really amazing to me. I
Yeah.
wish I could share more with you, but off camera we can definitely do that.
Yeah. No, I completely understand. It's the same exact thing with Ellen. So,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, but dude, so let's talk a little bit. I mean, with kind of the dads out there, what are, let's say for instance, I don't know, think back to the last like 30 clients or so that have come to you. What
Mhm.
are what do you kind of seeing the most? Like, what are like the big red flags, or like, what are some of the issues that people are coming to you with?
So, I mean, it primarily, I mean, you probably see this a lot too of like, hey, man, I want to lose the dad bod, or like, hey, man, I really let myself go. And because of my background because I first started with eating disorders. So, a lot of the counseling aspect and kind of bringing it back to purpose and why, I really try to engage, especially with my online, Fit Dad clients, where it's like, there's an understanding of like, hey, your body has changed, obviously, you've quote unquote let yourself go, but when we go deeper, the thing that I see, Justin, all the time is just the shame response from not feeling like they're doing enough, not feeling like they're setting their family up enough. They're working so much to give them flexibility, but at the same time they don't have any energy to connect with their wife, or obviously their sex drive is down. So there's a lot of hormonal things that come about, and I try to tackle both, obviously, from a nutrition and self care perspective. And then also really bringing out a little bit more relational communication where it's like, hey, I know where you're at. I know how you feel. I've had other people know, that can relate to you. So let me have you reach out to so and so. So it becomes a whole lot less shame based and a whole lot more like empathy and grace. And I think usually using those words, like most men are like, I don't have shame. What are you talking about, man? Right. But at the same time, it points back to realistic expectations, and this, sometimes our expectation of ourselves is much higher than anyone else, right? And that's one of the things that I tend to see all the time.
Yeah, dude, 100%. I would say we probably work with more women than men,
Mhm.
but a lot of which are, moms, right? And,
Yeah, yeah.
it's the same thing. It doesn't matter, like male or
It
female, it's the
doesn't
same
matter.
thing.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, and especially with parents. I mean, I see this a lot, and I can definitely see why, right? I mean, I just went through it the last 8 weeks here, so it's like,
Yeah.
it's almost like, you feel guilty, right? Because you have this human being, or multiple kids, right? I
Mhm.
mean,
Yeah.
I worked with one of my clients. Shout out to Ruben. He had triplets to start off, and yeah, I mean, I was just like, wow, like can you teach me? I'm gonna start taking notes, right? Like, uh,
Dude, that's scary. I don't even know how people do that. The twin, triplet, like, oh my gosh. Like, to me, I'm like, oh no.
yeah, no, I mean, I talk to my mom all the time, and I'm like, the fact that you had twins, like, just, I, kudos to you. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. It's tough.
But anyways, so I'm like totally blanking on where I was going with that.
So we're talking about parenting.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't exactly know where I was going with
Okay,
that.
let's
It'll
go.
come back. Yeah, it'll come
Yeah,
back to me.
yeah,
But oh yeah, that's what it was. It was the shaming, right? So
yeah, yeah,
it's this whole concept of like, look, we have to prioritize ourselves, right? Like
yeah,
it's not selfish. Like it's almost this concept of like, you have to be selfish in order to be selfless, right? Like
yeah,
you have
yeah.
to, you have to fill up your own cup, right? So that you actually have something to pour out, to others. And I think
So
that's a
true.
concept that I see, especially with women as moms. But I mean, here you go, and you're talking about with dads, the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are these conversations looking like, or what are maybe some of these like strategies looking like in terms of, and I'm sure it's probably pretty individualized, but what are maybe some strategies in terms of just like that assessment and actually creating awareness that they're
Yeah.
having some of these issues?
Yeah. I mean, one of the big things that I do right off the bat, whether it's the elite level athletes that I work with or any of these fit dad clients, where I tell them at first, we're going to throw a blanket of curiosity on all of our behaviors versus saying, this is what I should be, this is what I should be doing. And so like, I always joke with them like, hey, don't should on our calls or anything like that. So, I don't want you to shit all over yourself, right? So that's one of the things I always like usually joke with people. But the thing that we point back to is routine. And the first thing that I have them do is start to track sleep, right? So they'll track sleep and they'll see like, oh my gosh, my sleep debt is X amount of hours, or I'm only sleeping 5 hours. And it points back to, energy efficiency. Like I'm always trying to preach to people about energy efficiency, not only just from the perspective of sleep hygiene, but also your morning routine, your nighttime routine, making sure throughout the day you're taking time for yourself. From an energy efficiency standpoint, are you doing things that are based off of self-care, Justin? Like you were talking about, like, are you refilling your cup, or are you just constantly emptying it? And that's one thing that I find all the time, because I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like the concept of the millennial parent is go, 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 go. And it's totally different than what we saw in past generations. And at the same time, there is a whole lot less of work life and family life balance. And so I'm always trying to engage men back into what is your routine, and then we go from there, because within the first 2 weeks, most people are looking for like, oh, I want to lose X amount of pounds. And that's something that I'm like, okay, like, all right, I'll hear you on that. And at the same time, there are some really great, profound items that we need to lock down. And in the first 2 weeks, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm only down 3-4 pounds, but at the same time, like my energy is huge. Like I'm connecting with my wife again. And I'm just like, okay, cool. That is the purposeful thing that we should be doing. And at the same time, if we take care of all those self-care items, if you make sure that you implement these nutrition strategies, these fitness strategies, yeah, man, your body composition is going to change. So like I see you shaking your head. I'm glad that you and I connect with that.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. I mean, it's so funny, I joke about it sometimes. I'm like, man, people come to us with like, they come to us for like nutrition coaching, right?
Yeah,
And it's like really what they leave with is like the mindset that's developed along the way, like towards, this whole like how to live a healthy lifestyle.
yeah. It's huge, man.
And
It's a mindset shift.
yeah, it's definitely a mindset shift. I mean, and it's nobody's fault. I mean, that's how we've just been, like formed, right? Like, I mean, the
Yeah,
days
for
of like
sure.
the meal plan, the days of like the macros, or, the days of just like the lack of education, essentially,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
especially education, like individualized to you, and
yeah,
not just the nutrition education, but like the lifestyle education, like equipping yourself with like the tools that you need, right? Basically, building your nutritional tool belt to allow you to, achieve
yeah,
long-term success.
yeah. Yeah,
So
I mean, I always do. I like having these conversations with other nutrition professionals because, and I go back to the university to talk about what I do and to empower them, because I tell them from the get-go, we're up against it. These people that come to us have been conditioned, kind of like what you were saying, to believe a certain way, to believe that nutrition should be something. And at the same time, throughout their process, they've totally eliminated the imperfection out of what eating is, what exercise is, what self-care is. And they've just been conditioned to say, well, I need to lose X amount of pounds by this date or else. And I'm like, okay, cool. You can keep going that route, but you will come back.
yeah, 100%. I mean, it's like, here, fine. You want to lose 30 pounds? Let me snap my fingers. Are
Yeah,
you happy
yeah,
now?
yeah,
No. Oh,
exactly.
okay. Well, then let's dive into this deeper, right? So
Yeah,
yeah, man, I completely agree. And it's, again, it's awareness, right? Self-awareness, I think, is one of the best things that like coaches can help people with. I mean, I'm a big believer, like I have my own nutrition coach as well. I'm a big believer in coaches need coaches.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think that like all of us could probably use, somebody taking a 10,000 foot view of our life and helping us, advance.
It's so true. Yeah. Yeah, man.
So
It's so true.
I love that, man. Obviously some of the popular diets that I'm sure you hear right now as well. I mean, obviously like the keto and like the intermittent fasting, and we could sit here and talk about these diets all day long. But I mean, what are maybe some of the common misconceptions around like fad diets that you hear from people?
I mean, I think it points back to that number. I mean, I've been running obviously this kind of a quote unquote exclusive Facebook group, right? Because I'm always trying to vet people that come in because I want to make sure that you have the same values. I mean, the big thing that I'm pushing is the thought leadership, the imperfections, and also asking questions about like, hey, what's the best way for me to be the best version of myself for my family? And then also maybe how do I feed my family type of thing. The thing that to me I think is really painful just for the family unit is kind of what they're hearing from a diet perspective of, okay, well, I want to lose this dad bod. Here's 30 pounds. Like I've lost 30 pounds in 3 months. And my question is always saying like, okay, well, are you able to maintain it? And I can't tell you a whole lot of people, I don't know how you feel, Justin, that say like, oh no, I can't maintain it. Or no, I love these foods way too much. And it really points back to, okay, like we can develop something that works for you. And at the same time, we need to make sure that you're doing these things because of not of a pure set of mind, but at the same time, like you have goals and they can be maintained because this is lifestyle, man. This isn't about a quick fix. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I mean, it's as you're talking through that, I was kind of like thinking back to college, and I actually never stopped college as many times as I wanted to. But it's like
Yeah.
I think about any of my friends that took like just as long or maybe even longer, and they started and stopped, and it's like
Yeah.
you get done, you're like, man, don't you just wish you would have just like finished the whole thing through without? But yeah, man, it's the question that's posed of like, cool. All right. You're unhappy or something's not working or, you haven't gotten the results as fast as you want to get. What's the alternative? You're just going to quit and go back to doing what you're doing before?
Mhm.
It's like, it becomes a question of like, how are you actually treating your body on a daily basis?
Yeah.
And it's not to say that you can't enjoy
Yeah.
yourself. I mean, I love, Mexican food and tequila shots and margaritas and all that just as much as
Yeah.
everyone else, but like
Yeah.
at the same time, it's like, it's this idea of like finding balance. And I think, what balance is for everybody is different, but you do have to create accountability and you do have to create awareness and you have to figure out what works for you.
Yeah. I love the classic kind of 80-20 rule because I mean, other people from other camps might say that it's still diet oriented. And at the same time, the way that I bring about this concept is just the concept of imperfection. Whether I'm working with the elite level athletes or even just with my online clients, it's about like 80% of the time on one end, you're either doing things that are going to help your performance on the dad end or the other, online end. It's like, hey, are you engaging in self-care practices, food, exercise, all those things? Are those things pushing you towards your goal? So that's the 80%. The other 20% allows you to be totally imperfect. It allows you to take a couple tequila shots and enjoy the Mexican food family. So for imperfection and almost like a permission to be imperfect. So I love that.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. And I mean, another example of that just for the listeners is like, I mean, we could break that down, right? Like for my data driven people out there, like,
Yeah.
cool. Like let's break down, like let's just call it 21 meals in a week, right? If you're doing
Hmm.
breakfast, lunch, and dinner, whatever. Right. And
Yeah.
so cool, let's take 80% of that.
Hmm.
Right. And then how many meals does that leave you for that 20%? And it just gives that perspective of like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
like if I have one meal, like it's not gonna, what's the saying? It's like one unhealthy meal never got you fat or whatever, and one healthy meal never got you shredded. It's like,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I love that.
especially coming off of Easter yesterday, I know some people
Yeah. Yeah.
can,
Yeah.
feel bad about that or whatever, but it's just like, try not to let the negatives like start adding up, right? Try to break that, right? Try to get back onto the positive, get back onto the plan as fast as possible. It's like, one meal isn't going to do anything.
Yeah.
One day is not going to do anything, maybe not even like 1 week, but like what happens when it's like months and
Yeah.
years? I mean, that's when it becomes a problem. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think shame has a lot to do with that. I think you get into this mindset of, well, I messed up. So either I can return to it or like I'm just done. And that's another thing that I find, especially with my one-to-one personal online clients, where it's perfection. Like a lot of the dudes that I work with are more perfection based, where they're like, well, if I'm not going to do it full fledged, then why do it? And it's like, okay, well, hold the F on, man. Like, this is not realistic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just like the people that are waiting for the right time,
Yeah.
right, waiting for the perfect time to start. It's like, guys, like, again, like, assuming nothing goes bad, you got a lot of years left in your life. So that means you got a long time that you have to continue to do this. And it's not a
Yeah.
matter of necessarily having a six pack or, being the fittest person on earth. It's like a matter of like just respecting your body and like realizing that this is like the only body that you get. Like, you're gonna die, and you can, either, expedite that process or slow it down,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, man, I'm totally with you on that.
well, dude, I think we're definitely aligned on quite a few things. We could probably sit here and chop it up with nutrition all day
Oh, I
long,
love
but I definitely want to respect your time, man. Dude, where can everybody find you at, on the social media world's website, all that stuff?
Absolutely. So Facebook, so our really great Facebook right now is the Fit Perennial. So it's obviously for fit parent millennial families. A lot of my messaging is obviously towards dads, but I also recognize too that I want it to be a team effort. So I'm encouraging parents just in general to do it. And yes, you don't have to be a millennial to be in it. Again, I want to vet you to make sure that we all have the same values and we're all supportive. So you can catch me on Facebook there. Instagram, it's Fit Dads Cook. I'm really active on there. That's where you and I connected, actually. So that's a lot of the two places where I'm at most of the time. So again, feel free to reach out. I always want to connect with people, ask questions, and as always, I would love to work with them on a one-to-one basis. So this is all about just providing value. So I appreciate you having me come on, Justin. I really do, man.
Yeah, no, 100%, Desi. I look forward to, like you said before, growing the relationship, growing the connection, and it's just cool to really use social media as a platform once again to be able to connect with like-minded
Yeah,
individuals. So, dude, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
absolutely.